My name is Victoria Hale, 29, senior legal counsel at my family's prestigious law firm Hale & Associates. My grandfather built it from nothing, my father expanded it, and my sister Rebecca was supposed to inherit it. That was the plan, until the day she seated me behind a marble pillar at her wedding reception, hidden from view like a family embarrassment. If you've ever been underestimated or betrayed by family, subscribe right now and share your story in the comments. You're not alone in knowing how it feels when the people who should believe in you most are the ones who try to break you down. I arrived at the Grand Meridian Hotel in my navy blue dress, the one I'd spent too much money on, despite knowing deep down that Rebecca would find some way to diminish me. The ballroom gleamed with crystal chandeliers, white roses, and the expectant faces of 200 guests, judges, attorneys, and clients who'd built our family's reputation over 3 generations. Victoria, there you are. My father's assistant smiled too brightly when I approached the family table. There seems to be a little mix-up with the seating. Mix-up? I repeated, already knowing this was no mistake. She led me across the room, past table after table of prominent guests, until we reached a wobbly round table partially hidden behind a massive marble pillar. The photographer's assistant and the venue's maintenance supervisor sat there, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. "This must be wrong," I said, my voice tight. "I'm the bride's sister." "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her eyes darting to where my father stood greeting senators. These came directly from Rebecca. Across the room, Rebecca caught my eye. Perfect in her designer gown, diamonds glittering at her throat, the family heirlooms my mother had promised would be mine someday. She smirked, leaning in to whisper something to her new husband, James. They both laughed, looking directly at me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. Instead, I sat down at that rickety table, opened my phone, and forwarded the sealed court documents I'd been withholding for weeks. The documents that would reveal my father's firm had been practicing without proper licensing for 3 years because of a filing my sister had deliberately sabotaged. As I pressed send, I thought about how it had all started, how family loyalty had nearly destroyed my career, and how Rebecca's cruelty had finally freed me to do what needed to be done. 3 years earlier, I'd been the rising star at Hale & Associates. While Rebecca charmed clients with rehearsed smiles, I won their cases with meticulous research and airtight arguments. Clients started requesting me specifically. Judges commended my briefs. My father even hinted that I might break tradition, becoming the first female named partner alongside my older sister. That's when things started disappearing. First, small files went missing. Then court notifications were accidentally not forwarded to me. I started keeping duplicate records, staying later than everyone else, triple-checking everything. Then came the day that changed everything. Our firm's critical licensing renewal paperwork, the documents that legally allowed us to practice law, vanished 2 days before the deadline. "Has anyone seen the licensing renewal files?" I asked during our morning meeting, trying to keep panic from my voice. They were complete and ready for signatures. Rebecca shrugged, perfectly manicured nails tapping against her coffee cup. "Weren't you handling that?" "Yes, and they were finished. I left them on my desk for Dad's final review." My father frowned. "Victoria, those need to be submitted tomorrow. You know how critical these renewals are." "I know. That's why I completed them last week." My voice sounded defensive, even to my own ears. I spent the entire night recreating the complex application, my eyes burning from staring at the computer screen, coffee going cold beside me. The office was eerily quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the frantic clicking of my keyboard. By morning I had reconstructed everything, but the submission was still late. 2 weeks later, we received notice of an audit. My father called an emergency family meeting in the mahogany-paneled conference room where generations of Hales had made their most critical decisions. The air felt thick with tension as we gathered around the table. My father at the head, Rebecca to his right, me to his left. The same positions we'd held since childhood. "The licensing board has questions," my father said gravely. "They're concerned about the late submission and some irregularities in our filing." Before I could speak, Rebecca cleared her throat. She looked down, her voice soft but carrying perfectly in the silent room. "Dad, I need to tell you something," she said, a slight tremor in her voice. "I found the original paperwork in Victoria's drawer. It was torn up." My heart stopped. "What? That's not possible." She continued as if I hadn't spoken, producing a folder with damaged papers inside. I didn't want to say anything, but with the audit, I can't let the firm suffer. My father's face transformed from concern to cold fury as he looked at me. "How could you risk everything we've built? Everything your grandfather sacrificed for?" "Dad," I didn't. Rebecca at least had the decency to come forward, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. What were you thinking? Was this some kind of power play? Jealousy because I mentioned partnership to you? In that moment, as my father looked at me with disgust rather than doubt, something broke between us. Something I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. The worst part wasn't his anger, it was that he never once questioned Rebecca's story. Not once. The next morning, my father reassigned all my major cases to Rebecca in a firm-wide meeting. The shame burned through me, as colleagues I'd worked alongside for years avoided my eyes. Victoria will be handling document review and minor cases until further notice, he announced, his voice clipped and formal. She needs to earn our trust back. I sat perfectly still, spine straight, face neutral, while Rebecca watched with barely concealed satisfaction. That evening, as I packed up the last of my case files, I noticed she was wearing our mother's sapphire bracelet, the one Dad had explicitly promised would be mine when I made partner. It looks good on you, I said quietly. Rebecca smiled, twisting it on her wrist. Dad thought I should have it now. Some things just aren't meant for everyone, Vicky. 6 months of flawless work on minor cases earned me a reluctant spot on the prestigious Westbrook litigation, a case I'd helped develop before my fall from grace. I prepared meticulously for days, creating what I knew was a bulletproof presentation for our most important client. In the sleek conference room, surrounded by Westbrook executives, I was midway through my analysis when the CFO interrupted. These numbers don't match what we provided last week, he said, frowning at his tablet. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry? The updated projections, he clarified, the ones we sent Tuesday. I hadn't received any updated projections. Before I could respond, Rebecca jumped in smoothly. I'm so sorry about that, Mr. Westbrook. There must have been a communication error. I sent those updates to the team, but perhaps Victoria wasn't copied. Her voice dripped with rehearsed concern. Let me pull them up for everyone. The room fell silent as she displayed the correct figures. Figures I'd never seen. The heat of humiliation flooded my face, my chest tightening as every eye in the room judged me incompetent. Afterward, my father didn't even wait until we reached his office. What happened in there? He demanded in the hallway, voice low but sharp. I never received those updates, I explained. Rebecca didn't copy me on the emails. He sighed, looking disappointed rather than concerned. Victoria, you need to take responsibility for your mistakes. Maybe you should stick to research and document review where mistakes are less costly. I swallowed hard. Dad, don't you think it's strange that these accidents only happen to me, and only since I started gaining recognition at the firm? Are you blaming your sister for your own carelessness? His eyes narrowed dangerously. Rebecca has stepped up while you've been failing. Maybe it's time to accept that. The final blow came at the firm's 75th anniversary gala. Champagne flowed as my father took the podium, his voice proud as he looked out at 3 generations of clients and colleagues. As we celebrate our past, I want to announce our future, he smiled. In 3 months, upon my retirement, Rebecca will become managing partner of Hale & Associates. Applause erupted. I stood in the back of the room, invisible, as colleagues who once sought my help clustered around Rebecca with congratulations. Rebecca saved this firm from potential disaster 3 years ago. My father continued, his reference to the licensing incident unmistakable. She represents everything this firm stands for: integrity, dedication, and excellence. Later that night, I overheard Rebecca telling a senior partner, Victoria's fine where she is. Some people are meant to be worker bees, not queens. The partner laughed, adding, at least she's reliable at doing what she's told. I slipped away, something hardening inside me, but it wasn't until a month before Rebecca's wedding that everything changed. I'd taken on a case for a small nonprofit that could barely afford legal fees, the kind of case Rebecca dismissed as reputation work, not revenue work. While researching, I needed access to archived security footage for an unrelated matter. Late one night, scrolling through files from 3 years earlier, I froze when I spotted Rebecca entering the records room after hours on the exact day the licensing paperwork disappeared. The grainy footage clearly showed her removing documents and later destroying them in the office shredder. My hands shook as I downloaded the video. Further investigation uncovered emails from Rebecca to IT requesting I be removed from certain email chains to streamline communication before the Westbrook presentation. The timestamp on the footage was unmistakable. The sister I'd defended to myself for years, the one I'd made excuses for, had deliberately destroyed my career and was about to be rewarded for it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, but clarity. and clarity, I was about to discover, is more dangerous than rage. I didn't confront Rebecca immediately. Instead, I methodically collected and preserved copies, secured timestamps and authentication certificates. I continued handling the worthless cases nobody wanted, including pro bono work for a legal ethics nonprofit that Judge Elaine Morris, who chaired the state licensing board, deeply cared about. During strategy lunches with Judge Morris, I carefully asked hypothetical questions about licensing violations and proper remediation protocols without revealing my firm's situation. I discreetly researched competing firms, taking evening meetings with Caldwell and Schmidt, who had admired my work from opposing counsel positions. What my family didn't understand was that while they were celebrating Rebecca's ascension, I was building both an escape route and a reckoning. The cases they thought beneath me had connected me with the one person who could bring the entire firm to its knees with a single ruling. Sometimes power isn't about who speaks the loudest, it's about who knows exactly where the load-bearing walls stand. At Rebecca's wedding reception, seated at my wobbly table behind the pillar, I quietly took photos of my isolated position, documenting the deliberate slight. My face remained a careful mask of dignified acceptance as waiters avoided eye contact, embarrassed by my obvious demotion from family to afterthought. "That's quite an interesting seating choice for the bride's sister," came a measured voice beside me. I looked up to see Judge Elaine Morris, elegant in her formal attire, eyebrows raised as she surveyed my isolated table. "Judge Morris," I greeted her, standing. "I didn't realize you'd be here." "Your father and I go back many years," she said, "though I must say, I don't think I've ever seen a sister of the bride seated quite so creatively." We stepped onto a quiet terrace, away from the music and chatter. In the cool evening air, her voice lowered confidentially. "I received your message about requesting more time to submit those corrected filings," she said, "but I can't hold the board off forever. They're meeting Monday." I nodded. "I'll have everything ready." "The documentation you've provided so far is quite compelling," she added, her eyes sharp with meaning. Across the room, Rebecca noticed us talking, her perfect smile faltering momentarily before she whispered urgently to our father. He approached immediately, interrupting our conversation with excessive charm directed at Judge Morris while barely acknowledging my presence. "Judge Morris, what a pleasure to have you here," he gushed. "I see you found Victoria." "Indeed," the judge replied coolly. "We were just discussing some fascinating ethics cases your daughter has been handling. She's become quite the expert on licensing compliance." Confusion flickered across my father's face before he smoothed it over. "Has she? Well, we try to give our junior associates varied experience." "Junior?" Judge Morris raised an eyebrow. "I was under the impression Victoria was senior counsel." Of course. My father backpedaled, looking uncomfortable. A slip of the tongue. As dinner was announced, he pulled Rebecca aside, gesturing toward Judge Morris with concern while Rebecca dismissively shook her head. Throughout the meal, I noticed Rebecca's increasing nervousness, constantly checking her phone and whispering to her husband. The wedding DJ announced it was time for speeches, and my father rose, champagne in hand. Pride radiated from him as he prepared to speak. "Family, friends, distinguished colleagues," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Today is not just about celebrating Rebecca's marriage, but about honoring our legacy." He spoke of my grandfather's vision, of the firm's principles, of his own pride in Rebecca's accomplishments. "In 1 month, as I retire, Rebecca will become the named partner of Hale & Associates," he announced to applause. "Some people are born to lead, others to follow, but a true Hale always knows their place." He raised his glass high, to Rebecca, who saved our firm and will carry our legacy forward. Then, almost as an afterthought, he asked, "Would anyone else like to say something?" A momentary silence fell. Without hesitation, I stood slowly, my champagne glass untouched before me. "I do have something to share," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The room went completely still. 3 years ago, someone deliberately destroyed our firm's licensing renewals, I continued. Today, I had to make a choice between family loyalty and legal ethics, the ethics our grandfather built this firm upon. I took out my phone, holding it up. 2 hours ago, I submitted evidence to the state licensing board showing exactly who sabotaged our firm. The security footage from our office is quite clear. Rebecca shot to her feet, face drained of color. "She's lying. This is jealousy. She's always been jealous of me." I continued calmly, ignoring her outburst. "The board meets Monday morning at 9. By Tuesday, this firm will either have new leadership or no license to practice law at all." I placed my untouched champagne glass on the table with a definitive clink that seemed to echo in the stunned silence. I've also accepted a partnership offer from Caldwell and Schmidt, who've been trying to recruit me for years. Chaos erupted. Rebecca screamed accusations. My father demanded explanations. Guests murmured in shock as phones began to record the scene. I walked calmly to retrieve my purse from the isolated table. Rebecca lunged forward, grabbing my arm with such force it would leave fingerprint bruises. "You ungrateful bitch. After everything we've done for you." I looked at her hand, then at her face, my voice low but clear. "Everything you've done to me, you mean? The security footage shows you destroying those documents. Your emails prove you excluded me deliberately. It's all with the board now." My father approached, face ashen. "Victoria, please, we need to discuss this privately as a family." "We've had 3 years for private conversations," I replied. "You never asked for my side once." As I walked toward the exit, he called after me, desperation cracking his voice. "You'll destroy this family's legacy." I turned, addressing the stunned room. "No, Rebecca did that when she committed fraud. I'm just making sure the clients and courts know the truth. I wonder how many of your cases will need to be reviewed when this comes to light." Monday morning, the licensing board met with me present as a witness. Judge Morris recused herself from voting, but remained to observe. By afternoon, the ruling came down. The firm could continue operating only under strict supervision and with mandatory ethics monitoring for 2 years. Rebecca was referred for disbarment proceedings based on the evidence. Her new husband consulted with divorce attorneys within the week. My father called repeatedly, leaving voicemails that evolved from angry to desperate to apologetic. The final one simply said, "I was wrong about everything." 6 months later, I sat in my corner office at a boutique practice specializing in ethics compliance, my name on the door alongside 2 partners who valued integrity above billable hours. My father requested a meeting. When he arrived, he looked older, diminished, his confident stride replaced by hesitant steps. "The firm is struggling," he admitted. "Clients are leaving. Rebecca's disbarment hearing is next month." He took a deep breath. "I want to offer you full partnership. We'll rename the firm. I'll make a public apology, whatever you want." My rejection was gentle but firm. "For years you chose to believe I was incompetent, rather than consider Rebecca might be dishonest. You seated me behind a pillar at her wedding. Now I'm sitting at the head of my own table, with people who saw my worth from the beginning." 2 weeks later, I won a major case against my former family firm, representing clients who had been neglected under Rebecca's leadership. From the gallery, my father watched, his face showing both pride and regret as the judge ruled in my favor. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making a scene, it's calmly walking away with your dignity, and watching as those who underestimated you realize exactly what they've lost. The table they banished me from now sits empty as clients choose my new firm instead. The reputation they valued above truth now lies in ruins because they forgot that integrity isn't just a word on a letterhead, it's a daily choice. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better? Who chose to believe the worst about you rather than see what was right in front of them? Share your story in the comments below. And if you want more stories about family betrayal, calculated justice, and the power of standing your ground, hit subscribe, because the most satisfying endings come to those who know their worth, even when others don't.